Covent Garden women. All right, let's hear what a Covent Garden woman wants to talk about.
Welcome to Heuristica.
Okay. Well, a man talking at a women's event about women's issues. I've seen this before. I wonder if it will turn out to be something other than a self-hating man pleading for female approval by confessing to his inborn wretchedness. Seriously, TEDx, prove me wrong.
It's a remote island community where I've spent a lot of time this year. Life there is simpler in many ways than here. There's only 100 people for a start. But it has its own economy, its own culture, and many of the same dynamics and complexities as anywhere.
You seem a bit nervous, Lee. You're sweating, you're hesitant, you're gulping a lot. Are you worried your presentation may not please the matriarchy?
I've come to know and care about the people of Heuristica, and I'm going to share some of their stories with you today. Oh, but one thing. None of them are real.
What a twist!
Heuristica is a computer simulation. If you've heard of games like The Sims or Civilization, where you set up the parameters of how people behave, how society is structured, stand back and see what happens. Heuristica is a bit like that.
Okay, sounds interesting. I'm with you so far. I thought 13th Floor wasn't that bad of a movie.
But it has a special purpose. It allows us to ask questions about things that are broken in society.
Broken? Or just not functioning in the way you would prefer? It's amazing how often those two notions get mixed up.
And try out solutions that might be too risky or too radical to test in real life. Think of it as a laboratory for social thought experiments. A lot of the experiments that I run in Heuristica are about inequality and discrimination.
You don't say.
And so I programmed Heuristica so everyone on the island has an ethnicity and a way of expressing their gender.
3 different gender expressions. This doesn't sound promising, Lee. You're already operating outside the bounds of biological reality. But this is, in quite literal terms, science fiction, so I'll suspend my disbelief for the moment.
As well as a lot of other less visible characteristics like their interests, their talents at work, and their personalities. And let me introduce you to 2 of the personalities on Heuristica. This is Cynthia. She's named after a friend of mine. She's a great scientist. She's a keen runner and a bit of a geek.
Named after a friend of yours, a scientist, athletic, and a geek. Okay. Oh, and circles mean female, I am assuming. All right, Lee, I'm with you so far.
Then there's Brad. I think we all know a Brad. He might not be the sharpest cookie in the toolbox, but he looks very respectable in a suit and tie. And he knows how to play the game.
So you named him Brad. You made him of lower intelligence, and you made him a superficial player who looks good in a suit. Lee, there was a bit of an edge in your voice as you described Brad. Maybe I'm reaching here, but I am curious if maybe there was a Brad-like person in your past, someone who might have mistreated you or you were jealous of, because when you described Brad, it sounded personal.
Whenever I run an experiment in Heuristica, I'm always rooting for Cynthia, and yet Brad so often seems to end up ahead.
You're always rooting for Cynthia. Lee, it's obvious where your bias lies. And, that's fine. But before we've even really begun, you have told us that whatever data you're about to relay, whatever conclusions or solutions you might have come to through these experiments, you did not reach them objectively.
People ask me what it's like in Heuristica. What's the lifestyle? What's the culture? Well, this is a picture of the weather. And I thought I'd share with you a page from last year's best-selling novel. As you can see, the language they speak there is a dialect of Double Dutch.
That's cute, Lee. No, seriously, I smiled a bit there.
But while Heuristica is built out of code, it's also built on economics, a new kind of economics. Traditional economics pays some attention to making a better society, but the solutions that it offers are so narrow that for many people, economists have lost all credibility in talking about this stuff.
Funny you should mention credibility, but Okay, I am no economist, so a large grain of salt when listening to me here. But what little I do know says that when economic systems are structured in such a way as to, as you put it, make a better society, they end up doing very poorly, both as economies and in improving society. Because how can you leave it to an economy, a system of cold equations, to determine what is better for people? How many economic models, with the structured goal of improving society, have been successful in the past?
It's all about free markets and economic growth. Now, I like free markets and economic growth, but they're definitely not enough. My work is in cognitive and behavioral economics. That brings psychology into economics, so it lets us look at all the biases, the assumptions, the mental shortcuts, and the emotions that really drive our choices. And that makes economics both a more realistic and also a more human discipline.
So you're using a computer simulation over which you, Lee Caldwell, had such minute control as to name the island's inhabitants, determine their intelligence, and their vocations to test your theories. So, is this simulation a reflection of reality, or is it a reflection of Lee Caldwell? You see, that is the amount of doubt you have already created in me, the viewer, and this is the lens through which I will have to assess everything you are about to tell us.
So I'm going to use heuristica today to look at a problem that's become increasingly important to me. And it starts with a story of how I first noticed that people were treating me a little strangely.
Okay, I am recording this very line I am speaking before I get past this point in the video, because I may be completely wrong, but if this story involves a guy named Brad, who is a jerk to Lee in some fashion, I am going to laugh my ass off and you are going to hear it. But I kind of hope that I'm wrong, because honestly, it would be a shame to think that Lee went to all the work he did on this simulation just so he could feel a sense of control over the Brads of his world.
So I'm 19. I've just walked into the office of my bank manager and I want to borrow £7,000 to start a business. This is 1995, and I'm talking about something called the internet, which I'm pretty sure the guy across from me has never heard of. And I'm probably on the edge of being, in a very polite British way, thrown out in my ear. But I'm wearing a suit. I have the same colour of skin as he does. I speak in an accent he's familiar with. And when I tell him I have a first-class degree from Glasgow University, suddenly I feel his attitude change. I must be the right kind of person. And in the next day's post, sure enough, a letter arrives, and they're going to give me the money. It was almost too easy. And now I realise that this is something called privilege. It's the set of invisible assumptions and attitudes that influence how we treat each other, and often lead to certain groups in society getting more opportunity, more influence, and being in a position to then pass those attitudes and assumptions down to the next generation in a vicious cycle.
Okay, no Brad mentioned yet, but anyway, let's walk through this, Lee. You went in for a loan. You sensed the loan officer wasn't understanding your pitch about the internet back in 1995. But then you mentioned that you have a first-class degree from Glasgow University. Then his attitude changes. Now, think for a minute, Lee. When you sat down with this guy, your skin was your skin. Your accent was your accent. Your suit was your suit. And your pitch to get the loan was just words. What are all of those things, Lee? They are superficial. And he was about to toss you out on your ear. But what happened when you brought up your education? When you showed that you had earned something of merit? When you demonstrated your credibility, Lee? Then his attitude changed. How can you not see the truth of your own story?
Once you spot it, you can see it in 100 places. From the customer who trusts me because I'm male, to the airport security line that I don't get pulled out of.
A, you are not a mind reader. B, something not happening to you is not proof that it could never happen to you.
And of course, for where I am, there's 1,000 more places where I don't see it. W.E.B. Du Bois first talked in the 30s about a psychological wage earned by white workers, not a monetary wage, but a wage in freedom, in access, and in the ability to just go where they wanted and do what they wanted.
All white people get what they want and go where they want. Why then were you almost denied a loan until you showed you possessed some merit in what you were pitching to the loan officer? You're white. Why were you ever at any risk of not receiving the loan?
Peggy McIntosh made the idea of privilege popular with her famous essay on the invisible knapsack of unearned assets that is carried around by privileged people.
Ah, yes, the invisible knapsack. Let's take a look at the privileges Peggy McIntosh claims all white people possess. Wow, 21 of them. Now, how many of them does McIntosh hedge her bets on by using the phrase pretty well assured? Wow. The thing is, Lee, if you're not guaranteed something based on your skin color, then it isn't a privilege. And speaking of privileges that are guaranteed, let's take a look at one that McIntosh does not hedge on at all. Number 13. Now, tell me, Lee, where was this privilege before the loan officer found out about your degree and decided you were a safer risk for his bank to invest in?
And we see it still today. The real Cynthia told me a story of a company who saw her CV, they liked her, they invited her in for an interview, and then suddenly, when they met her in person, the job required more experience in finance. I wonder why.
Because she didn't possess enough experience in finance? Oh, but you know better, don't you, Lee? You know the real reason. Because you can read minds. Also, you're sweating more. Your voice is quavering, you're licking your lips. Seriously, Lee, are you all right?
Now, even though I've benefited from privilege, I don't want it to exist. It's frustrating. Humanity can't achieve its potential if it's giving special treatment to one group. And I've seen the pain and the waste of talent of people around me who don't get access to the places in society where they can flourish. And to be quite selfish about it, it's kind of boring to be surrounded in my office building with people who just look and sound like me.
Wow, Lee. Just wow. Do you have any notion of how hateful and obsessed you sound right now?
But who am I to talk about privilege? Clearly, I benefit from it. I'm a white man. I'm middle class. I'm educated. I'm straight and cis, not too old, not too young. I even have an accent that's supposed to make me sound extra trustworthy. Every advantage you can imagine.
And none of those things, save one, the one that you earned through merit and was not just an arbitrary factor of what you are and where you were born, it was that one thing that got you the loan, Lee.
And that's right, the first people we must listen to in this are the people who have been on the other side of privilege. But sometimes, to dismantle a system, it helps to have someone on the inside.
Ooh, you're the inside man now. Sounds sexy. You're a hero, Lee.
And the sad fact is that people who look like me sometimes only listen to people who look like me.
Wait, sometimes? Lee, you're talking about privilege. Either you have it by default, or it isn't a privilege.
So if I can use my voice and evidence like heuristica to amplify the voices of the people who don't listen to, I hope that is a worthwhile contribution. So that's why I built heuristica. We know about the biases that people have. We know about some of the statistics about inequality in society, but we don't know the pathway from one to the other. That's what heuristica lets us uncover, and that's what might let us fix it.
You've created a fictional world to help find a way to fix a world upon which you are imposing fictions that make you a hero despite everyone else who looks like you all being villains. You're special. You're the rebel. You're the white knight of your own story.
So let's see how privilege plays out on heuristica. We start by creating an employment market, companies that employ people. Most of these companies, like the real world, founded by people of one ethnicity and one gender. And these companies also have biases in their recruitment, just like Cynthia faced.
That you assume Cynthia faces, Lee. You do not know that to be true.
This is the formula for one of those biases. This is what gives you the advantage if the company that you're applying to unconsciously prefers people who look like you. But it's not just formulas and it's not just code. I also wanted to listen to people. And so here are some of the things that I heard when I spoke to people about their experiences of privilege. They don't listen to me in meetings, only to my male colleagues.
Might be true, might not be true. Anecdotal.
Everyone on the interview panel was white.
A racist. Sounds credible and completely relevant, Lee.
I have to work extra hard just to get to where other people start out. So I built all these messages into Heuristica, and that lets us run an experiment.
You built a simulated island on the basis of anecdotal paranoia and racism. Sounds like a paradise.
So here we are, 1966, the beginning of our experiment. Everyone's just left school or university. They're just starting their careers. And it starts out kind of equal. Then what happens? We set the clock forward, and we start to see the inequality appearing. At the left there, you can see people who've obviously joined an investment bank or started a .com company. And up there, you can see Brad and Cynthia. At the end of 50 years, Brad is paid 22% more than Cynthia. And it's definitely not on merit, I can tell you that.
Well, if it wasn't merit, then what was it? You say you wrote the code in order to reflect reality, a reality you built on the claims of truth from women, racists, and your own preferences. If Cynthia achieved less than Brad, and it wasn't a matter of merit, then you must have discovered the equation that proves the existence of the patriarchy. So, where is it?
So we have now created a world that looks a bit like the real world we live in. And here's the exciting part. Now we get to change things and see how to fix it.
Okay. I am ready to witness your magic bullets. Let's go for it.
So picture me hunched over my computer keyboard late at night, trying out different formulas, different policies to see how can we do something about this. It's not an easy problem. I went to look at the research literature, and I also went to talk to companies and see what they were doing. But that's where I found something troubling, an extra problem. And that is that there are people out there who just don't think this is an issue. They'll give you excuses. They'll tell you why it doesn't matter. It's not as important as all that, or why they don't have a part to play in fixing it. But the great thing about Heuristica is when you hear one of these excuses, we've got a secret weapon. We can test it out and see if it's true. So let's start with this one. This was said to me by the co-founder of a company that just happened to be 80% male, although the co-founder herself was a woman.
Whoa, wait a second. This quote is coming from a woman who co-founded a company? Well, hell, she must not have gotten there on the basis of merit, right, Lee? Because merit isn't a factor in your world, or this world, says you. Now, what did this woman have to say again? She wants to hire the best people, not enforce equality for its own sake. Lee, do you know what that's called? A meritocracy. Are you saying that's a bad thing? Weren't you complaining that merit wasn't a factor in Brad achieving more than Cynthia? Isn't this a situation you would find desirable?
If this company really is unbiased, and I'm sure that they don't overtly discriminate, how would they even know who the best people are?
Their education, skills, and professional qualifications, maybe? Like, I don't know, having a first-class degree from Glasgow University rather than just being a white guy in a suit?
Well, we know from psychology research that the people who you'll model as being skillful and talented are the ones who look already successful around you. And if historically that's mostly white men, then white men are the ones who are going to get the advantage and get the best offers. And that's exactly what we see.
Your loan, Lee. Remember your loan.
Run the simulation, and Brad is still paid 13% more than Cynthia, even without an overt prejudice at the base.
So, wait, you removed overt prejudice, and Brad is still ahead. Okay.
Now, this one you often hear from economists, because of course the free market will sort everything. If women really were paid less, well, companies would just pay them less and make more profit, and then everything would even itself out in the end? Well, apart from how exploitative that sounds, does it even work? No. We can program heuristica so that there are several companies that only employ women, but it doesn't outcompete and it doesn't make everyone else behave better. There's still a gap at the end of 50 years.
So women-only companies are unable to compete in your simulated world where you have already removed prejudice. Okay.
Some people think this is a problem of the past, and, well, more women than men go to university now, and the pay gap for professionals in their 20s, according to some stats, doesn't exist. Well, if that's true, then presumably when we run the clock forward, we'll see that everything is fine. And so we test heuristica. Instead of going back in time, we go forward. We run 50 years ahead, and there's still the echoes of today's inequality. And that 5% might seem better than today, but that, over Cynthia's career, is $200,000. That's a house.
There's still a pay gap in the simulated world you created. Okay.
And of course, people's choices do make a difference to their success. But where do choices come from? They're not made in isolation. Choices come from culture. They come from the inequalities that people already face. And you will get judged not on the choices that you make, but the choices that other people think you might make. And that is the result, 10% gap.
Wait, what? You're programming in judgments of people based on choices they might make. Okay, now I'm getting really confused. And your numbers still come out as uneven. I thought this was the part of the presentation where you were going to show us your fixes to these problems. So far, all I see is that even in a hypothetical world where you are imposing utopia, you still can't get the answer that you want.
So just eliminating prejudice isn't enough. Inequality is too entrenched. So what can we do? Well, one of those late night programming sessions, I come up with something.
So you determined that mentally conditioning the entire world would still not get you to the answer you wanted. Okay, this sounds like it might be the big reveal. I'm ready, Lee. Hit me.
So we start from a clean slate. Let's say that we've all taken our implicit association tests, we've found out our unconscious biases, and we've trained ourselves not to act on them. Our companies all have generous and equal childcare policies. There's one more thing we have to do. These companies need to start hiring for diversity.
Not for merit, for diversity.
So if every company on Heuristica starts to look around, look at its workforce, see who's underrepresented, and make better offers to the people who are not reflected in its workforce, well, let's see what happens then. Everything starts off roughly the same. And at the beginning, the companies that do this don't do so well. There's still enough old boys networks to resist. But there's a tipping point. And once 40% of the companies start to implement this policy, it's the ones who don't who start to lose out. And finally, we have Cynthia up where she deserves, ahead of Brad, and the pay gap is eliminated.
Up where she deserves. So you massage the code in order to achieve the outcome that you wanted. In a world that operates on the basis of diversity. So your socioeconomic panacea is to discriminate hiring practices based on gender and race, not on merit. You wouldn't tell us what the mechanism was keeping Cynthia down, just that it wasn't merit. And instead of basing your ideal model on the recognition of merit you say was being denied Cynthia, you achieved the outcome you wanted by making Cynthia's gender carry more weight than her personal accomplishments. Bravo, Lee. Bravo.
There's a couple of reasons for this. One is that if you're not hiring for diversity, you're going to miss out on some of the best candidates. If you want to take the top 10 programmers in Heuristica, but you're only recruiting from a quarter of the population, of course you're going to miss out on some good talent.
What did that female co-founder say again? Right. She hires based on talent, Lee. And 80% of her company ended up being male. So tell me, Lee, was she lying? Or was she being sexist in favor of men? Choose one.
Privilege doesn't just exist in hiring and employment and pay, of course. It's in the justice system, it's in schools, in politics, in relationships even. But heuristica lets us explore all those things too. And what we've learned about privilege, we can try more widely. I'm building a version of heuristica now for international development, so we can see what do economically poorer countries have to do to make themselves better off. It can be used to explore the psychology and economics behind long-term unemployment and even political solutions to ethnic and religious conflict.
So the answers you arrive at using the simulation you're creating, you intend to bring about world peace. Okay.
The history of the world is a story of one experiment after another. America was described as a grand experiment in democracy, an experiment that for sure got many things wrong, but they're gradually being fixed over the decades. Across the world, from India to Brazil to Ireland to China, people have done terrible things to each other in the name of making a better society. The civil rights movement in the US was called the Great Experiment of Equality, and the Soviet Union was called the Great Experiment of Socialism. And who knows what they're going to call the experiment Britain is in the middle of, withdrawing from the European Union. For thousands of years, powerful people have tested out their ideas on the societies they lived in and the societies they didn't live in. The successes and the failures of those experiments have taught us to be better at being human, but the price of the failures has been paid in blood. What if there were a way for us to find out what ideas might work in the safe environment of a computer program? What if there were a way to test without trying out our policies by force on the lives of 1 billion people? That's what heuristica can let us do. And I look forward to a day when humanity's biggest questions can be answered without causing humanity's greatest tragedies.
That is a noble goal. And it would be great if all of the world's problems could be gamed out in a computer ahead of time and assured conclusions and solutions could be found. Now, this was filmed in October, so you did not have the benefit of knowing what happened just a month after this, where normal people defied every model, every poll, and every mainstream prediction of certainty, and elected Donald Trump. If you think that by imposing diversity on the world at the expense of merit, if you believe the world to be inherently racist and sexist, and that you mean to purge prejudice from the minds of people in order to arrive at the outcomes you prefer, you're not aiming to be a savior, Lee. You're looking to become a tyrant. As always, thank you for watching.